Hi, this is another episode of What's Ahead for Framingham. I'm Geoff Epstein, the host of the show, and we're doing this at Access Framingham Studios. They're always a great crew, help us out here. The aim is to get information out, particularly on how the government functions and on this current election. And today is an unusual treat for us because it's not just me talking at you, it's me talking to Carol Spack, who's running for councillor from District 2. So welcome aboard, Carol.
Geoff, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay, well, it's lots of fun. We've talked a lot, but now it's time for us to have a bit of a chat in public, which is going to be very exciting. So I was wondering, I've told the audience here a lot about my background, but you're a longer term resident of Framingham, so I thought you might fill in a bit of background, how long you've lived here and what you've done professionally and things like that. So there you go.
That's a great question, and I can certainly answer that question. My parents moved out with me in 1957 when Campanelli was building the Pinefield neighborhood. And I remember moving in. The houses were mostly unbuilt, but we moved in on Craig Road. There were mounds of earth in the backyards of all the houses, construction equipment, and that's my beginning in Framingham. I watched as that neighborhood was built out, as people moved in. They moved in with little kids, they moved in with older kids, and it was really a terrific environment. The Pinefield Shopping Center was part of a planned community, and Campanelli had an architecture department. I have since interviewed the two architects who were the prime designers, and they were students of the work of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Wow,
and those houses were designed as mid-century modern, highly efficient houses. The overhang, our house faced south, which is how the house is designed. The overhangs are measured, so for this latitude, when the sun is low in the winter, the sun hits the slab foundation and heats the house. And in the summertime, when the sun is higher, the overhang shades the house. Highly efficient houses. Wow. The heat is in the floor. I still live in that. I live in that house now. I moved back in '93 and still have radiant heat. Highly efficient house, thermopane windows. They're wonderful houses. The convenience of Pinefield was terrific. My father took the train. My mother drove him to a station at Lanham Road and Route 20 to his law office at 73 Tremont Street in Boston. Fast forward, Framingham Public Schools grades 3, 4, 5, and 6. There were so many sixth graders, we were bused across town to the Memorial School. I spent 1 year there and made friends on that side of town. Secondary school was a private secondary school called Beaver Country Day. I went to Harvard. After that,
What did you study at Harvard?
I studied philosophy.
Oh, excellent.
I chose a topic that I knew nothing about.
Yeah, my wife did French and philosophy, so this is
just love it. And then I thought, well, philosophy, it's a department. The course catalog was this big. That's too simple. You could create your own concentration. So I put together a curriculum for my own concentration in aesthetic philosophy, and it was part art history, part studio art, and philosophy. I took ethics classes primarily, but other schools of philosophy.
So then after that, what happened?
I left. Every reputable person who's 22 leaves and goes as far away as he or she can, and I moved to California.
Oh, well, okay, that's as far as you can go.
It is. I lived in Berkeley
country
for a year and a half, and then I moved across the bay to San Francisco. I had started an architecture program at UC Berkeley. Mm-hmm. I missed the studio, I missed making things, and I thought this choice isn't quite right. It was an experiment. I do want to go to law school. And I worked as a paralegal in the Transamerica building and looked out over the bay.
Okay. I know
it was spectacular. Yeah. But that year at UC Berkeley caught my interest deeply because it was a planning-oriented architecture program. It was a program for people who had not studied architecture. It was a master's program. There were 25 of us in that class, and we stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning every night to work on our design assignments. And that process and that study of neighborhoods, I went out into the city of Oakland and wrote a manual, a self-help manual for people getting their own permits to renovate parts of their
Wow,
homes.
so this was way back you were involved in this.
Absolutely.
Like, you must have been involved in this for like 50 years.
1978, yes.
Yeah?
I,
All right.
I drove cross-country
Yes.
with my close friend Mark, and we took all back roads. And then I enrolled at MIT as a special student
Yeah.
in the planning program to see whether that would be a good way to continue.
Yeah.
Went to the Radcliffe Ceramic Studio, worked as a temporary typist. What a life. It was great.
Okay.
And then enrolled in the MIT School of Architecture Urban Studies master's program. And that first
Okay.
year worked with an urban design professor and was funded through our work, and went to Pittsburgh and studied neighborhood renovation and investment and wrote a chapter in a book that was, I would say, paid for by Department of Housing and Urban Development. That left a deep impression. I love neighborhood design and housing and studying neighborhoods. I wanted to
So
fill
this
out
is
my
after
education.
law school or before law school?
Before. And
Okay.
I wanted to fill out my education on the topic of housing. I wrote my thesis, master's thesis, on rent control, and compared
okay.
the Boston rent control statute
Yeah.
to the Brookline bylaw. And my thesis advisor was town council for Brookline.
Well, I was under rent control in Brookline. I
A
had
lot of people were.
Three-family.
And
then-
learned what the benefits were for people who could have a rent control department, and what the frustrations were for landlords, and how Brookline handled the frustrations, how Boston handled the frustrations. There was a major land use rent control case brought by Brookline landlords. It's all flooding back, challenging how their buildings were assessed, because rental property and commercial is assessed based on income as
Yeah.
well as market value. And the net result of that is the law in Massachusetts is that assessments on rent control properties are lower than that same building if it were not rent controlled. And
right.
so the tax revenue.
Economics, right.
I still wanted to be a lawyer. My dad had been a lawyer.
So why did you want to be a lawyer?
Some of it was impressed on me very early. My grandfather, my mother's dad, was a lawyer. My father
So
was
this
a
runs
lawyer.
in the family.
Yes, and
You're
my
the third generation of lawyers.
I'm the third generation of lawyers. My father died a week before I started college.
Oh, dear.
I was 18,
Yeah.
and I do not have siblings. And I wanted to be sure after college that I was not doing this just to keep his memory
Yeah.
alive. And it was a kind of testing of how deep was the desire independently in me, and it is and was. And then I went to Northeastern Law School.
Okay.
I worked for one big, one medium-sized firm in Boston.
And what year is this roughly?
84 was when I
Okay.
graduated from law school. I took the bar. You're admitted that next calendar year.
Yeah.
Passed it on the first time. And after 4 years working in firms which had a real estate practice, I decided I could no longer be, it was excellent training, a cog in that kind of corporate machine, that
Yeah.
it was time for me to go out on my
Right,
own.
but it gave you a just different angle on the whole planning, development,
Absolutely.
housing thing. So you've run the gamut from, there's design end, there's the legal end.
Yes,
So you really covered the whole spectrum.
intentionally.
So, yeah, so if we wanted to, hire you to go onto the city council here, you would be a great asset for the prospects which face Framingham right now, which is development rather out of control. But we want to make sure that on the council, particularly since the council is heading towards permit control, that we have people on the council who have a pretty deep background on that. We have Christine Long, obviously.
Mhm.
But this says you'd be the second one onto the council with that kind of background, because there's no other councillor that I know of who has that background. Would that be a fair enough assessment?
I would say it's very fair.
Thank you.
That is education, that is professional work,
Yeah.
and my next endeavor was not chosen, it was, I would say, put upon me. Ken Dallimore wanted to develop the Girard Turkey Farm, 1998,
Which turkey farm?
Water Street. That was a
Oh.
turkey farm.
So you're back in Framingham.
I'm now back in Framingham,
Okay.
and I came
And
back
what
in
year is this now? It's the late 80s?
1993.
93, you're back in Framingham,
Back
and
in
now there's a
Framingham.
turkey farm.
Well, it had been there for generations. I
Okay.
lived in
Oh,
New
but now it's being developed into residential
Correct.
or something, right?
I had lived in New Jersey. I was a
Okay.
member of the bar in New Jersey. I was teaching art to children. Came back. 1993. 5 years go by. Relatively speaking, it's quiet. I was building my law practice. I had an office in Newton Upper Falls.
Oh,
And
okay, I know
suddenly,
that, yeah.
the word goes out, there's a developer, the turkey farm has been sold, and there's going to be a residential development off of Water Street that comes around and cuts through Craig Road, which is a dead-end street.
Which is,
And I thought, over my dead body.
Yeah.
And 50 of us came together and formed a neighborhood association. My law practice was real estate, zoning, housing, art law, and nonprofit organizations. And we quickly I created a nonprofit corporation, applied for tax-exempt status, and we were able to do fundraising. And we hired a law firm, and we hired an engineering firm, and participated at the preliminary subdivision hearings and at the planning board hearings. And after several years of this, there was a lawsuit as well. The project was approved, it was finished, and people came forward and said, you should run for the planning board. And I thought, well, I'm not a political person in that way. I don't think so. The second big project that caught my attention was up in Saxonville, which people call the gravel pits, where there also are town wells. From a zoning point of view, that was called the Planned Unit Development Zone for
and whereabouts is that in
and that is
Saxonville?
Old Connecticut Path, right near the Wayland town line.
Okay, okay.
I thought no one should have to go through what I and my neighbors went through.
Yeah.
The advantage of developers is they do this every day, but
Right,
neighborhoods,
neighborhoods only hit it once
People-
when it hits them.
but you don't know. It's terrifying.
Right.
And I remember Helen Lemoyne, a planning board member who I joined, saying most of us became active because something came along, and we were mobilized. So I went up and said to the folks up there, I've just been through this. I'd like to participate with you. So that went on for a few years.
So I can stop you there and say, look at where we are now. We
It's-
have Knobscott,
Yes.
which inflamed a neighborhood. We have the
Correct.
Stearns Reservoir thing, which inflamed a neighborhood.
Correct.
And similarly, 90 people down there signed a petition at Knobscott. About 1,400, down at Stearns, 1,400 in Knobscott. So you have these two neighborhood groups fighting local development.
For your life,
Yeah, and
for your
it's like,
home.
it's replaying what happened. This has been going on for a long time here.
It's been going on for a long time. I put out a petition for the Pinefield Shopping Center zoning status. In 2003, I did run to be on the planning board. All of the incumbents had been there, I think one of them, 20 years. And I was the top vote getter in that townwide election. I was thrilled. I didn't know what was about to unfold. There was not joy in Mudville when one of the longest incumbents did not get reelected.
Right.
The other four members did not talk to me for about a year, and my
Right.
friends came and sat in the front row. It was really I would say, an initially tense situation. By the end of the second year, we were getting to know each other, and things were okay. By the end of the third year, it's like we had been there really for a long time, and I ran again for a second term, and I ran again for a third term, and when I chose not to run for a fourth term, I missed them.
Right.
We missed each other, and
So-
that is I think, the dynamic. You
Right.
get to know each other,
Right.
you work together.
And this is very interesting because there's a juxtaposition here between what you experienced and something that comes up in my campaign and
Yes.
so on. But I'm going to hold that and come
Please.
back to it because it's a very interesting thing. But before I get there, I think we've started out and got a really good background.
May I add one thing?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Please. When you build your own law practice, it's one client at a time, one at a time, and I did
Right.
other things. I taught for 6 years as a visiting
Oh, right,
lecturer
at MIT, wasn't it?
at the MIT
Yeah.
Real Estate Center, which is a one-year master's program for people who wish to join the real estate development field. And they are not mid-career, but just below that, planners, architects, and the lucky sons of closely held real estate development companies, but also real estate developers with big staffs. And there were 3 classes a week. I taught one of them. I got to know the students, graded all the papers, and we invited first-class real estate developers from all over the country to come in and give lectures. And that course was land acquisition, financing, leasing, residential, commercial, workouts if the project failed, and bankruptcy. So it was cradle to grave. What does real estate development look like on the residential and commercial side? On the planning board, we wrote the planning board decisions with the assistance of Jay Grandy and Amanda Loomis. So that experience is the other side of the coin of what does a developer have to do to get permits. And on the permitting side, I've spent 9 years writing decisions. So it's a comprehensive curriculum for land use planning.
So you're the answer to someone's prayer if they said, I'd like to get someone on the city council who is deeply experienced in development, planning, legal side, even design side, and so on. Wouldn't you say that was true? Right, well, it is true. So I'll just leave it there because you're obviously modest.
It wasn't a plan.
No, but it's natural interest. And one of the things that is of great concern in general for any elected body, and the council is just another one of them, is the diversity of experience of people on that board. And we have Christine Long, who's long been in planning and works out of, works in Newton. And she has a very large amount of knowledge there and was chair of the planning board here. So that's great. But you add a completely different take on all of this, the legal aspects, the design aspects. I think that would give the council some really good hitting power in that area because, as I said, Phil Otiavani is in real estate development, but he's a developer. He hasn't been through that same career path. So what I'd like to look now is through that lens that you have, look at District 2 issues, and particularly the Pinefield Shopping Plaza. And I understand you were canvassing along there and finding out what was happening there. And so you have a bit of a story to tell there. Am I right?
Yes, I love talking to people. The best part of the campaign is you get out and you meet people. You're at the person's front door. But it isn't just residents. I go and talk to small businesses, and I was curious what the people who own small businesses in Pinefield are experiencing now. That property sold in November 2024. I go to the Registry of Deeds documents, and I look at the deed, I look at the purchase price, and try to get a sense of who's doing what, when, and how.
Right, because it matters who's buying up what.
Correct. The Dunkin' Donuts owners own the property now. And I thought I'll talk to the tenants. The rents doubled when the new owners took title.
So this is just at the end of last year?
Yep, November of 24. Coincidentally, during the MBTA Community Act City Council hearings, which were October, November, December, the buyer paid approximately $6.5 million, which seems to be a considerable premium, over the assessed value.
What was the assessed value, do you know?
It's multiple parcels, but it looks to me like it's approximately $2.5 million.
So they were above quite a way. That's quite a way.
So they have expectations. I don't know whether the expectation is a rezoning. I don't know if the expectation is something other than a rezoning. Maybe Martians will land from another solar system. I don't know.
Well, it was very interesting because this parallels J&J Company acquiring property in Knobscott.
Yes.
Because they had one critical property that they were, which they bought at 810 Edgell Road, which was important for access to their 30-acre parcel. And the house there was typically assessed, or should have sold normally between $800,000 and $900,000. They paid $1.2 million. And they, in addition, found another place for the owner to go to just a mile away. And so the owner did really well there, but they paid above market for it. And that is with the expectation that they were going to develop that property, because
Yes.
the whole MBTA thing, you know, Charlie was pushing Knobscot development ostensibly on it. We've got to spread it out, but in fact there was no reason to put anything there because there's no transit within, in Australian I would say within cooey of there, but it's within a long distance. So that was happening there, and so here comes this other developer right in the same time frame, buying up property at a premium with the expectation, it seems to me, that they would then be able to get this area rezoned for residential housing. Is that a fair enough thing to say?
It seems like the most likely.
Like, why would they be jacking up the rents by a factor of 2 on tenants if they didn't want to get them out?
The impact of the MBTA Communities Act, which is really not about the MBTA and it's not about communities, and I would call it a big beautiful bill for big beautiful buildings, is displacement. And in this instance, the small business owners in Pinefield are being pressured financially, and they will be displaced. And where will they go? And the same thing has happened in Natick at the shopping center, which happens to be right next to the MBTA line. But with the Pinefield Shopping Center, there is no...
Yeah, there's no connection.
There's no connection
at
to
all.
the legal content of the MBTA Communities Act. It says within a half mile of the train station, and the train station is 7 miles away from the Pinefield Shopping Center.
That clearly made no sense at all. And also we're
doesn't.
killing commercial property in favor of
Correct.
residential.
Correct.
And so on. So that's one area. There's a couple of other
Yes.
areas there. There's a whole McGrath Square, which is where Elm and Central Street come together, the major intersection there.
And Water Street, Central Water,
Yeah.
and it goes around like
As
a
well.
clock face.
Right, and so it's a high traffic area, and it's always been a bit problematic, and there's been endless delay on redoing that
10 years.
thing. Yeah, it's gone on and on and on.
10 years.
And people say, oh, first we have to do the substructure and this and that, but whatever it is, it's been delayed. Further, there's the Athenaeum,
Yes.
which has been sitting there for how long has that been a problem? Because it's a historic building. And my personal opinion of any city or town is if you have really wonderful historic buildings, you should preserve them. And so it seems to be a very half-hearted,
Yes.
no one's committed thing where they
Yes.
seem to paint it every 20 years or something. Tell me what you think about the Athenaeum, just in a rough kind of way. My opinion is we should preserve it, we should find a use for it, but we should certainly not do what King and Cannon wanted to do, and that is to knock it down.
I love historic buildings. I'm currently an antique map dealer. If we don't keep our history, how do we know how we got here? How do we know about the place? We have to preserve the historic buildings in McGrath Square and in Framingham. And historic doesn't mean just 19th century. I mean, Pinefield's mid-century modern. This is 2025. So it's understanding that in each epoch or each era, people settled and lived a certain way, and we only now have shreds and remnants. We must preserve the Athenaeum. We must.
And it goes along, that's a very historic area in my view, because you look at there's the smaller mansard buildings and so on.
Yes.
And then there's the
Yes.
Saxonville Mills with these strange towers.
Oh, I
and
love it.
caps. And it's
I
like,
love it.
and that whole area, it seems like that could really come up a lot. My problem is, as a consumer, is I kind of drive past and I have no idea what's in there.
Yes.
And if I want to park, there's no space to park because all of the business owners park their cars
Right
in
there.
the front lot, and you have to go all the way down the back. So there's some obvious simple things to be done.
Yes.
So that's an opportunity waiting to be developed in many ways. There's a lot of very interesting little businesses in there, but you have to
Yes.
be like a pioneer hacking your way through the jungle to find them. And they're great businesses, but I think we could do a lot more to develop that. But there's the historic aspect, there's the firehouse next to it as well. Again, we should be trying to preserve that. But then further down the road on the left is the abandoned lumberyard. And one thing that bothers me in any community is when you see abandoned buildings. And that's been sitting derelict there for a long time. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on what I would call the bigger picture is that Saxonville was a commercial center. And we had a train coming in, and a lumber yard would have a stop for goods to come off. The factory goods produced at Roxbury Carpet had to be initially taken out on a train and a truck, and there was a fabric, both residential and commercial, to that entire Saxonville center. And now we have missing teeth.
Yeah.
The fabric has been rended. I mean, why? And so having that empty parcel poses the question. That's been empty, I think, since the late 1970s. Tony Kwan came to the planning board when I was on the board with a site plan and special permit application, which we approved for a small shopping center, which he hasn't built. What are my thoughts for that parcel? My thoughts for that parcel include looking at it first in context, not by itself. We've done too much development approval, but not enough. What is the coherent picture there?
Right. It's the planning of the thing.
What is the planning of the thing? Is it housing like Victoria Gardens, for example?
So where's that?
Across the street, and those are mansard roof.
Yeah.
Those are built, I think those are built in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And they're townhouses. What is going to happen at the Pinefield Shopping Center? I envision a waterfront-oriented destination. I think about South Natick. I see the Pinefield Shopping Center property with a double-deck parking structure, and on the top, it's a patio with views to the Sudbury River. We have to think about the biggest feature in Saxonville, and it's the river.
Right, and that's a key thing actually for all of Framingham.
Yes.
We have the Sudbury River flowing through Framingham.
North to south.
Right, and we have all of the water, which makes this a wonderful community.
It's beautiful.
We have Farm Pond, we have the reservoirs. It makes it gorgeous. We have woodland and water. Where do you get that in such abundance as here? It's astounding. And with Saxonville, as you drive through, there's very little awareness of the presence of water. You can see it there, but if you look at Water Street as it comes up, there's an automotive building right there,
Wally's.
blocking the waterfront, where you could say, oh, I could have a restaurant there, or I could open this up so you can see the view of the water, just as you say in South Natick. And for people who don't know, at South Natick there's a nice little shopping center, and then there's a little dam, and then it looks very pretty from the whole area as you're looking from the shopping center towards the water, and we could have exactly the same aspect here.
We can. We certainly can. I look at that, I'm going to say as a person who loves the natural world and the river, but also as a planner, the private property owners in Saxonville have tried everything they possibly can to continue that as a small commercial area. And I say shame on the prior owner of the Pinefield Shopping Center, who ran it into the ground, and I am hoping the new owners are receptive to working in a public hearing with planning staff, with architects who come in, and listen to what neighbors are thinking, so we can have a first-class, unique destination where the focus is on the river. But what I want to add to that is what it has taken for private owners to stay in business. The owners of the Saxonville Mill are now second-generation owners, and the landlord, Charlotte, the owner, deserves tremendous credit because she has invested in that mill, and before her, her father, who everyone really was grateful to know, because that was mostly light industry, and under Charlotte it has gradually changed to smaller spaces, some art studios, smaller businesses, and now retail, and the city must do everything it can to at least meet her halfway as an owner, so that that continues to evolve.
That's my impression, because I I went in there. I've been in there a number of times. I went
Yes.
in there and saw the artist studios and the various businesses there.
It's wonderful.
And then, but I went in there. I couldn't find the person I was after because it was impossible. There's kind of navigation, and their name wasn't on the board or whatever.
That's tricky.
But you can see that with some good design, you could easily find your way. And also, it's just that there's a whole upgrade path there that
Yes.
could make this absolutely fabulous. And I think that the city should have a very strong interest in helping the owner of that property develop it in the right direction. And the way it is now, it just gives me the feeling that that's not the case. And I don't know the details of the relationship of the city to that building, but I know that it seems like in the last 10 years nothing much happened. When I drove past, nothing much happened in the way it looks. And it's just a rough and probably wrong impression, but I feel like that should be one of the crown jewels of Framingham. We have quite a number of crown jewels, but that should be one that says, wow, someone should say, I went to Saxonville Mills. And yes, the coffee at Saxonville Mills Coffee Place is great, and that's a success in my view. But the rest of it, like there's a framing place, there's photography studios, there's some other small businesses in there that you don't know about. There's one fellow who kind of sells you objects with your name on it. I went in and chatted to him. And so there's all of this stuff there, but I feel like it's something that if you think of other places, like if this is a crazy thing, but if I'm on Martha's Vineyard and I'm walking along the waterfront there and I can see the ocean and there's all these beautiful little stores and you have a great feeling and you're a tourist, and there's lots of things to do. There's ice cream to buy and food to eat and this and that and the other, but it seems to me like why not have that in there? Why couldn't you have a restaurant in there? Why can't you? I mean, it wouldn't have a water view, but then a lot of great restaurants don't. And there's a huge amount of parking out the back. So you could park there and come in. So anyway, that's just my running on
Well, let me just pick
about
up.
what could happen.
I think what I hear is creative small business people, creative people, require a place to do their work and their creative work, and those spaces can be irregular. They don't have to be too big. And where do we have either an existing building to do that or adaptive reuse? The Pinefield Shopping Center is built in the style of the mid-century houses. Where can we create more of that? We are famous in Framingham for big box warehouse stores, but we are not famous for building or replicating any of the 19th century or mid-20th century buildings. So I think that's what I take from your comments, Geoff, and that kind of architecture permits an entire community to sprout and to thrive. We're not going to have 19th century mill buildings that require water power, but we still, as a town or a city or as a society, we still enjoy these complex places to gather. And
it reminds me.
I hear that.
Reminds me of when I was in downtown. Downtown is flourishing because of the Brazilian businesses that have grown there. Yes,
definitely true.
And you go to Viva's Flowers, which is a lovely little flower place. And then you go to Fresh Cafe.
Yes.
And that's really a delight. And so along there are various businesses, hairdressers on the other side, then there's the sushi restaurant and the furniture store and so on. And they have parking out the back. And in fact, on the left side as you're going towards the rail track, there's a little arcade area hidden
I love it in there.
Right?
The
And you go in there and
yes.
it's like a little arcade. It's very much like one I know in Coolidge Corner in Brookline, which is a beautiful area with little stores, very active, open to the public, delightful space. We have one just the same, but it's not developed yet. So there's upside potential there. There's energy, investment, activity happening there,
Yes.
which is the same kind of thing you're talking about in relation to Saxonville Mills,
Yes.
because you have these individual business owners coming together in a cohesive way,
Mm-hmm.
supported by the city to make a thriving area. So it's happening in downtown, and it has a very beautiful design element to it, because you have the
Does.
planters, and you have the way they redid the lamp posts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pretty. That's quite well done. And you think, as Saxonville Mills, the exterior, you don't have that decoration yet. You don't have nice navigation of what's in there yet. It could easily come up in that kind of way. But so we have the beginnings of these things. And so it's a matter of us shifting our mentality from big box stuff to thriving on these smaller scale commercial developments that, when aggregated, make a remarkable downtown or make a remarkable Saxonville Mills area. And I mean, I was always somewhat disappointed with the planning board, in the sense that we had the, this is not to be negative on staff, but we had the planning director from Hudson, who was chair of the planning board, and Karen Johnson. And when I go to Hudson, it's lovely. It's all kind of 3-story height buildings, beautiful roundabout with flowers, restaurant after restaurant along there with parking down the back. It's beautifully done. And yet we seem to have not had that thrust from the planning board. In fact, the planning board didn't even have an architect on it until I think they now have an associate member. So I'd like to just get back to one last point on the river before we
Please.
move on. And that is,
Maybe we'll
we were talking earlier, before we had this set up, I had some conversations with Carol. And one thing about that, we have this river, but there's the most unexpected way in which the river was managed. And you said it was by the Corps of Engineers or something came in and
Where
did some
the
work.
state lumber business used to
Right.
be, which we still call the state lumber site, the Sudbury River runs through, but the riverbank was altered by the Army Corps of Engineers because that area used to flood on occasion. And it was altered in a way that was not natural. It's
It's a wall
gravel.
of rocks, right?
It's a wall of rather big
Right.
rock, which will never be vegetated. So that side
Right.
of the river is man-made, and I would imagine it was dredged, and I would have to look at older U.S. Geological Survey maps to see what the course of the river was. The housing on Concord Street, it's Concord at that point, across from the mill, I suspect sits on some fill. The rationale was, we are doing this so that development can be done and won't be damaged. So for the FEMA maps and the flood control area maps, I'm sure there was some interplay to create development opportunities. And there are people who would like to see that parcel kept as open space and have it be a riverside park. It's worth considering. I have a bigger vision, and that's to look at the natural bank of the Sudbury River across from the Pinefield Shopping Center, and to think of that as a longer-term potential location, literally
Right.
for a riverside park. That will take some time, that will take some planning,
Right.
but we've got the beginnings of that. But in terms of the site that you asked me about, I look across the street at the Victoria Garden, and those homes are the scale and the fabric of the existing neighborhood. And my belief professionally, but also just at a personal level, is when you see fragments of a neighborhood, the way to strengthen that neighborhood is fill in those gaps in a way that is similar or compatible, but most importantly, reinforces the fabric of that neighborhood.
Right.
It was meant to be pedestrian, and that's what I love about it. And you see people walking down School Street to the Pizza Wagon or the Wagon Creamery or
Right.
to the coffee shop. We need to get that pedestrian flow from
it's-
Stapleton and from the Pinefield Shopping Center. people used to walk, but there isn't enough of a destination there now. So reinvigorating that.
You need to, this comes to the thing of planning.
Yes.
We seem to be a city or a town originally too, that specialised in making plans and then putting them on the shelf. And could you make a comment about planning in the city in terms of what seemed to be some very good planning that has been done in the past, which has never been acted on?
Many people think of master plans.
This is a leading question.
It's a wonderful leading question. Master plans as documents, and you don't just put them on the shelf in a library, you put them way, way, way in back. It's a roadmap. A plan is a roadmap. That means it's for people who are driving and for people who are in the back seat. Our government hasn't been in the driver's seat. We have reacted. Developers come into Framingham, and it's all reaction mode. The planning board at the moment has no staff. We have a development planning staff person. It has no staff. We need to get back to understanding.
So that's remarkable, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
How can you have a planning board which is not fed information by a staff member?
Impossible.
I mean, what does that staff member do for the planning board?
It's intake. Jay Grandy and Amanda Loomis reviewed applications and sat with the applicant until the application was complete, and we would be updated. This project has come in, it's not ready for hearings because the application is not complete. And the application, to be complete, had to have adequate surveys. It had to have adequate testing. It had to have an adequate set of drawings. And when all the documentation, all the field work, all the title work was straightened out, it then came to the hearing, and the planning board director, Jay Grandy, would write a memo to planning board members who had not 20 minutes, not overnight. We typically had a week to read the memo, ask him questions, go out to the site and look at it, and then we would come to the hearing. Right. And as it progressed and information came in response to planning board member questions, there would be another memo, this is where we are now. And then a next memo, this is where we are now. Right. It was a constant education process for board members.
Right, so
constant.
What you're saying is we don't have that process now.
Zero.
And so the planning board is operating without a lot of vital information.
Zero.
Right, and therefore it's not a surprise that we're getting developments that are done that aren't so great.
Correct.
Is that fair enough to say?
I would say that no one could operate in a technical field which also requires judgment. It isn't just a technical field, it's judgment because you have gone out and you've seen enough and you've seen how other communities do this, you've seen what other parts of the country have done. There's no capacity.
But we're missing key staff.
Yes, we are.
To support the planning board.
Yes.
And there's a counterpart to this on the city council. According to the city charter when it was written, and it was quite sound in this regard, the city council was supposed to have someone who would help them, who was under their control with financial.
What was the title?
It was auditor. It was an auditor,
Yep.
just like the city clerk is reporting to the city council. So they were supposed to have an auditor, and that was the model set up in the charter. The auditor, whichever name you give that position, that was supposed to be a source of information, financial information and otherwise, to the city council. In Newton, where I used to live, they had the controller. They had the CFO, but the controller managed all of the accounting of Newton, but reported to the city council. So if the city council wanted information on anything, they would simply ask the controller, and the controller would provide it.
Makes sense.
And that was very vital for many planning things.
Yes.
So in this case, the city council has never had someone they can ask who they control.
No one.
For information. They're dependent totally on the mayor, 2 mayors, and although the city council also can require under charter various reports on pretty much anything, they have not asserted that control. They can even prescribe how the budget should be presented to them, but they have never done that. So the city council not only has not hired its auditor in 8 years, they tried and they failed recently, but and this goes to the financial leadership in the city council. It's absent as far as trying to get requisite information for the city council to function. So just as we have gaps on the planning board, there are gaps on the city council in terms of finance. And there is no one on the city council who we can say is a professional financial person.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who've fallen into it. I mean, George King was a political science major at Boston College, and then was elected to city clerk, and then became town manager with no experience. It was the most unusual appointment. And then he left and went to be finance officer at Neshoba, combined school district, again with no experience at that job. So he had both jobs with no prior experience. But we don't have someone who's credentialed, like Lincoln Lynch was very well credentialed hire we did into the school district. You know, he'd been a finance officer in a number of companies and had come up the career chain in that manner with increasing responsibility. Right. You have understanding of finance, how it works in businesses. Then he was in the Norton school system, got a very good understanding of that, and then he came here. We have no one on the city council who has that. Now, if you got on there, you and Christine Long would provide a lot of hitting power on planning, and it is, given the experience both of you have. But in finance, we have had a lot of trouble, and so my argument in my campaign is things are badly planned financially, and that we need the kind of reform on the city side that I and Lincoln Lynch and Bob Tremblay brought to the school side, where we completely revamped all of the budgeting. But when you come to all of these things, I'd like to come back to the point you were saying when you were elected to the planning board. No doubt, you know, when people were talking about your prospects when you're running, they say, well, we don't know who she is, and maybe she won't get along with the planning board. And indeed, it was difficult because they tried to shut you out for the first year. But then, as you got to know them, as you got more experience with it, things worked out. And so the old guard on the planning board opened up to someone new.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I'm criticized to some degree. People say, well, I don't know whether Geoff can work with the city council. Well, there are two responses to that. One is, as mayor, if I elected, I don't report to the city council, I report to the community. And the city council, similarly, is elected, reports to the community. So it's not whether, I'm going to be acceptable to the city council, it's whether both the city council and I are acceptable to the community. But the interesting thing is, I know actually a lot of the city council members. If you start at District 9, there's Tracy Bryant, who I served with on the school committee for 2 years. If you jump to District 5, there's Novel Alexander, who I served with and know quite well, because he and I did a lot of the flyer campaign work for the fuller debt exclusion. I mean, every afternoon during the week he would come from his school job and we'd meet at 3:20 outside his apartment. I'd give him 200 flyers, and then he would go off and drop them. Right?
Our best friend.
Yes, we dropped 10,000 flyers over Framingham in the fuller debt exclusion.
Wow.
And I managed that, and he was one of the major folks doing that. We bonded over that. So he and I,
You do.
I kind of
You
have
do.
coffee with him a number of times a year. We keep in touch. So there's Tracy, there's Novel. I think Leora Malark in 7, I don't know her well, but I think she did a great job summarizing the MBTA-CA solutions as they came into that November process. I think that she has held on with that composting task force for 18 months.
Oh, yes, it's
where
terrific.
she has done a great job. I respect her greatly as a councillor.
Yes.
And then we got Leslie White Harvey, who I helped get elected last time round. I dropped flyers for her. And she is a feisty, independent voice, and she will ask the mayor questions. The mayor will get a bit kind of upset at being asked questions in a meeting, and I'd say that the difference between Leslie White Harvey and John Stefanini is there's no daylight between Stefanini and Sisitsky or Stefanini and Otiavani, but there's a lot of daylight between Leslie White Harvey and the old guard. She is an independent voice.
She's her own person, and that's why you are elected. You're elected to the legislature of Framingham, we're a branch of government, and
Right.
we work with each other,
And you need voice.
and
that
we
is
need a voice.
We don't want to be a monoculture of ideas where everyone's thinking the same way. And the old guard way of thinking
right.
is very much the same way. And there's very little debate on the city council from
noticed that.
my point of view.
Yes.
And so we need fresh faces on there. And I do hope that Leslie gets re-elected. No one's
Yes.
perfect. There have been criticisms of her, but I think that she actually represents District 8 much better than John Stefanini would, because John's been around for 33 years, as Leslie will often say. And I think that there's time for new approaches, and she should be given a second term. But then we come down to Mike Cannon, who's in District 4, and I've disagreed wholeheartedly with Mike on solar panels and stuff. But I was down at talking to one of the larger business owners, not in downtown, but not too far off. And Mike Cannon had been very helpful, helping that
I'm
business
sure.
owner
Oh, I'm
try to
sure.
solve problems. So,
Yes.
and Mike and I have always got along very well. We don't necessarily agree, but he's always very cordial.
Yes.
And then there's District 3, Mary Kate Feeney, and kind of I went and had a long coffee with her at the bagel table in Ashland. And we agree on 80% of things. So I think she's a great asset to the council.
Oh,
Ken,
yes.
Ken Weiss, who she's run against, also is a great person, very interested in environmental things. So in District 3 we have a race. We have two very good people running there.
We have two thinking people who
right.
are action-oriented.
And they're both people certainly
Yes.
I could get along with very well. And then we got
Yes.
District 2, well, there's you. I have talked to Brandon, but I think that you bring much more important know-how to the City Council at this point, at this stage in our development. No pun intended. And then there's Christine Long, who is unopposed, but also is a vast reservoir of planning and development know-how. So I think that's running the gamut there. So I expect when, well, if I get elected, might be when, but if that happens, I think we'll all reset, and I think that it will work out very well. And I think I look forward to that. I worry about the planning board because if we don't have those staff positions filled in, and also in the City Council the same thing, you can't function properly independently without that kind of staffing support. If I'm elected to mayor, I will provide that support, because
That's excellent.
one of the things I'm going to do
That's
is
excellent.
require reporting from DPW on roads and water and sewer
Absolutely.
at least a couple of times a year, because there's been none in
Yes.
8 years. And so it's amazing the lack of reporting which has been
Wow.
done. Also, the whole budget process will be redone the same way as on the school side if I get elected. So we've covered a lot of territory. I just have to consult my notes here to say, yes, I think we've done almost everything. And we've talked about downtown. Well, we talked about downtown a little bit. One thing that I think is remarkable is the historic part of downtown. There used to be the Harmony Grove meeting
Yes.
area off Franklin.
Yes.
It's remarkable, very historic things in terms of human rights occurred there in
Absolutely.
meetings. And that's right in the area where there's the CSX siding yard.
You
where
noticed.
They store trains full of who knows what chemicals and this and that and the other. I mean, in the longer term, you would like to go back to the Harmony Grove meeting area days where that used to be water.
Yes.
And there used to be a bridge with one train going along down that way, and this meeting area, and the city still
Yes.
owns a property along Franklin Street there. And to expand that, join it up with Farm Pond, recreate that meeting area,
Yes.
and then integrate Farm Pond and the Chris Walsh Trail that'll go all around it back into downtown, so you can go and have a nice walk or go to the Harmony Grove recreational area and then go and have a cup of coffee or have a pastry or have dinner downtown where they're integrated and where you have events and artist studios in that area. Now we're going to have the Danforth building used to be that, and then we let it go to nothing and it's going to become the courthouse. But I still think that there's a lot of open space in that area. There's a lot of parking lots that are around. But I think we need to have a plan and a vision for that downtown area. What's your thought about that? This is going to be the last topic.
Yes, of course we do. For 10
We
years.
have 5 minutes left.
10 years at 59 Fountain Street from 1998 to 2018, I had both an art studio and my law office. After I left Newton Upper Falls, I was briefly in Cambridge, and then I moved my law practice out to what was a 1,400 square foot art studio. There were 146 studios and small businesses in that building.
And they all went, didn't they, when it was converted or not?
That was the largest art community west of Boston within 128, and the city approached Dick Goldman, the owner, with a list of building code violations and said, we are shutting you down unless you do this, this, and this. It just happened. There were investors ready to come sweeping in. They bought the building. Everyone was displaced.
It's like Pinefield.
It's exactly like Pinefield. Everyone was displaced, and it's now very expensive rental property with a second building going up soon. So to some extent, I think the horse is out of the barn. There was an art community there, and there was an art school in the Danforth building that had the most wonderful studio programs. And the building with the high ceilings and the cement floors had a ceramic and a sculpture program going, and it's now been diminished and put into a very sanitized space where you don't have the ability to vent or have a big kiln. It's not an art studio building. So we have lost that capacity. I think there's every reason to ask, where in Framingham might we continue it? Can we? And to tenaciously hold on to our existing older buildings and ask the question, they are here, and either we invest in them, but if we demolish them, they're gone forever. But we now on Speen Street have 3 office buildings that are empty. And every time a recession is coming, they're the canaries in the coal mine, those buildings go dark. In Woburn, the Massachusetts trial court is in an office building on 128. Why don't we look at our local landlords and our local rental companies like Gordon Real Estate and ask, would the owners of those 3 office buildings like a long-term tenant, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and place the courthouse on Speen Street. So lawyers who are representing clients get off the Mass Pike, they get off of Route 30, they get off at 128, they take the train, and clients also come in. What a fantastic way to centralize the location without demolishing a brick.
Right, and so what we're seeing is neighborhoods changing in a very substantial way.
Yes.
Art communities lost.
Gone.
Yeah.
Kicked out.
Completely gone
Kicked out.
in favor of building apartment buildings, which the mayor would say pays the bills, but I think
But
that
it
is
doesn't.
is not true
It doesn't.
in
It
general.
never
They have all
has.
kinds of
Never
side
has.
agreements. But okay, I think we're going to have to stop there. My question now is, how's it looking in your campaign? How does it feel? And what's your quick take in a minute of how you view your experience?
People know who they can trust. People know that what we've had for the past 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years has left them with a bad taste in their mouth. They're looking for trustworthy leadership. They're looking for people with experience. They're looking for people who speak simple English and tell them the truth.
Right, and that's
whether it's good or bad.
Right, and that's
good or
a
bad.
good summary, because that's exactly what I find. I find, like, okay, so I've had some experience, 10 years in school committee, this and that and the other. I've studied, the city inside and out for the last 2.5 years,
of course.
getting information. But in the end, the way that we've been doing things is not working. And so people want something new. And yes, it's always a chance when you take, when you have a child, you don't know what's going to happen, but you make sure that you do everything you can to support them. And so if we get elected, I think the most important thing for us is that the community keeps on supporting us. If they elect us, it will be because they want change, and we want change, and we will do everything we can to bring the best change to this community, because we care about this city.
Deeply.
You do, and I do.
Deeply.
I love living here.
Deeply.
And so the wonderful thing is that we get an opportunity to actually execute some of these dreams that might have been sitting around for a long time and make the city really hum. So that's
Yes.
my hope. So thanks for coming.
Thank
This I
you,
thought was a wonderful
Geoff.
conversation. Worked
Thank
out
you.
very well.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you running, and I appreciate everybody else who's running. And I think hopefully this election will see the start of some real change in Framingham. So this is Geoff Epstein thanking Carol for coming along and having a great conversation. And thanks for watching What's Ahead for Framingham. And we'll see you. This is the last pre-election episode.
Thank you.
G'day.